Hello and welcome everyone to this weekend's live stream. We are going to be finishing the Bonne Bouche that we started last week. I'm going to put the wing on, the underwing, the wing, the sides. It has horns, uh, pretty much everything except the topping, and then it has a red wool head, which of course we'll use uh, red mohair dubbing for instead. Uh, First, the underwing is golden pheasant tippet, and just gonna select a few here. Couple the usual quick announcements. If you want to see more of my work, you can check out my Instagram at justwondering.brad. And if you would like to purchase any of the flies that you've seen me tie here on stream, you can head over to my Etsy shop. It's Studio1213 on Etsy. And yeah. Let's see, just picking through some golden pheasant here. And so I think normally this would be a mixed wing fly. And for the underwing, it has golden pheasant tippet. It has listed, I should say, golden pheasant tippet, peacock wing, teal, and then for the main wing, it's got some swans, some pheasant, golden pheasant, lady amherst pheasant, bustard. I think because I'm going to tie this as a built wing and not a mixed wing, I'm going to change a few of the details. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do tippet for the underwing, and then I'm going to marry the peacock wing into the main wing. So I'll do what I've done before, where because peacock wing is a shorter fiber than, say, turkey or bustard, um, I'll just marry it to the bottom of the wing a little bit short. So it'll look like an underwing, but it won't actually, it'll actually be married into the main wing. And then I'm only going to include the teal in the side and not in the underwing as well. Because teal doesn't play very well in a married wing unless it's a fairly small fly, maybe like a 1/0 fly or smaller. This is technically a 3/0 hook, so the teal that I have is a little too short to actually be incorporated into the wing itself. Yeah, so let us start our thread. Yep, need my trash can as usual. It is a warm weekend here. I hope everybody is doing well. So I'm going to build up a little extra thread base here for the wing. Like I said before, it's just because the throat hackle, the stem of the throat hackle creates like this step that the wing and the underwing have to get over in order to lay flat against the body, if that's the style you're going for. So usually you have to add up a little bit of extra thread bulk, and because I like to have a good clean I don't know, flow, I guess. That usually ends up being a fair amount of extra thread there. Okay, a couple of tippets. Pretty good match, as you can see. Pretty good curvature going down. So that'll help it rest against the body here. And then, again, because I don't want my underwing to be too tall so that it pokes through the main wing, I'm actually going to strip off most of the fibers. Oh no. Darn, I ruined that feather. It's being a little bit too greedy. Alright. A little too aggressive with my feather prep there. I'm going to pull out another feather. Good match? No, that's not a good match. To say this tippet patch that I have here is a little bit weird because it seems like all of the feathers, it's like missing a segment of feathers. You can see the split like right here. It's like those are the exact feathers I need. But so I'm looking for a particular kind of swoop to the feather so that it'll match. So, one, two, nope, that one. Matching up the two sides is fairly important when you're doing full feather wings or like full feather underwings like this, because if you want the feathers to lay straight and not be like twisted or curved, they have to exert equal forces on each other. So matching them up is fairly important. And I'm also looking for a particular curve to the stem. Again, also to kind of counteract the forces between the two feathers. So I'm going to try and pick. Okay, here's a pair. Here's a pair. That should work. Yeah, I got a little overly aggressive with my feather prep there. I ended up actually snapping the stem of that one tippet. So, moral of the story is, don't be too greedy about how much you take off. All right, so as you can see, I'm almost fully stripping one side of these tippets, and that side will end up being the top side of the underwing, and that's just it's just so that the underwing won't poke through the top of the main wing. So I'm gonna figure out how long these are gonna have to be. Quite a great match, but we will do. So let's go to approximately here. So I'm just going to flatten the stem, and I'm going to pull off all the short little extra fibers that'll snag under the wing. So and that'll also just help it get up and over um, the throat. So I need to make it a little bit shorter. Usually when I do a tippet underwing, I like to have this first bar, the lower bar of the tippet, in line with the butt. Which is my personal preference. Okay, and then all I'm doing is taking my flat nose pliers, doing a little bit of a flatten right at the tie-in point so that they're flat. And then, of course, these being tippets and having certain, you know, we're flattening them, but then we're tying them onto a round thing. I'm just going to give them a little bit of a propeller twist, and I'm going to give them an opposite propeller twist so that they have a tendency to want to push into each other when they're tied on. I've explained this in other videos before, so I won't go into too much detail today. I will hopefully be able to do a better kind of, or a more edited how-to video series coming soon, maybe. Like I said, I've been, like I mentioned, I think last week, I've been experimenting with some different video editors now so that maybe you can do it. I'm still figuring out the setup, trying to figure out something that's comfortable, because obviously as I'm tying here in front of you, I have my full range of motion, and then but when you're trying to do something with a camera in front of you, you kind of end up being a little bit constrained, by the camera, by the setup. If you have lights, you have to stay in the lights. If you have a camera with a short depth of focus, try and stay in the focus. Just wasn't quite happy with the alignment there. I just need to make this a little bit shorter. Yeah. Okay. It's not bad. It's just a tad bit longer. So if you want to even out the bars on the wings, you just kind of pull on the butt end of the too long wing until it behaves. You can also use the butt ends as kind of like steering levers to position the underwings, directly in the middle. It's pretty good. I would like them to be a little bit tighter to the body, but I don't think I'm going to worry too much about that. We are going to pile more stuff up on top of them, so that will compress them down to the body just a little. I'm having a little bit of trouble with the twist, so these two feathers aren't quite equal. I think it's just the one that's closest to me is a little bit, just a little bit more powerful than the other. And by that I mean the stem, the rachis is just a little bit more stiff. And so I'm going to just take off. I'm not going to take off anything. I'm going to just give it a little bit more of a crimp, just to weaken it a little bit and see if it'll balance better with the far underwing. And like I said, we'll be adding more stuff on top. So yep. Mm. And the underwing is really important to lining out, getting the main wing to be aligned. So it is really important to get it straight if you can. Now that's pretty straight. Just want to futz with it just a little bit. Okay. And a lot of getting feathers to do what you want them to do is just keep futzing with them until they behave. Um, Particularly tippets. I, for whatever reason, have a lot of trouble with tippets. Um, but can't do too much about that. Got to use them almost every pattern has. A lot of patterns have them for underwings. Can't help that. Right, so we're gonna wax our thread, tie down the butt ends of the tippets so they don't go anywhere. All right, just gonna lay down a little bit of a nice base for the wing to set on, and then I'm going to marry up the wing. Again, I'm going to put the peacock, which would normally be in the underwing, into the main wing as the lower layer. So start with that. Um, just a little bit. If this was in the underwing, then you'd just see a little bit of it. So I have about 4 fibers of that. Then it's got claret and yellow, swan, which of course we will substitute with turkey. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this isn't a very complex wing. There are 2 colors of turkey, 2 pheasants, and bustard. So golden pheasant, amherst pheasant, and speckled bustard. So we'll do 4 fibers of each, and we are going to marry them in a slightly more complex pattern. Amherst. I have some of these sections here. They're actually the best segments, but they'll do. And as usual, we'll put the golden pheasant on top. That's kind of the last thing. Again, that's just my aesthetic. You could mix golden pheasant into the rest of the wing. I prefer not to. All right, so we have all our components laid out here. I think we're just gonna do start with the peacock wing. We'll do the full chunk because again, this is supposed to be part of the underwing. And then we'll go 2 of yellow, and of course we're gonna marry it in so that the peacock is a little bit shorter than the rest of the wing, because again, peacock would be part of the underwing, and also peacock wing fibers tend to be a little bit shorter than the rest, and so we want to make sure that there's enough of it to tie in when we tie in the wing. So here you can see that fits, and then we'll go 2 of Lady Amherst pheasant. Yeah. Okay. Get some more. Two of claret. Again, we're marrying a full 4 fibers on. Then we're just generally separating off that which we don't need. And speckled bustard. Okay, and then we'll start over with the yellow. I'm gonna need to cut myself some more Lady Amherst pheasant because one of those fibers was cut. Yellow. Two more of Lady Amherst. Like I said, that's not exactly the best, nicest Lady Amherst tail section, but it's what I've got for this. And it will do the last bit of claret. Right. This is really not nice. It's cool. Come on, stick. I will say, normally, I would say Lady Amherst pheasant is one of the nicer pheasants to marry into a wing, but I think this stuff is just a little bit old, or maybe it wasn't treated well. Just having a little bit of trouble here. Particularly in the kind of the darker bars of the Amherst. That's okay. So that looks pretty good. So there's the wing up to. And you have to remember, these are all natural materials. They'll come in different qualities. They'll come with a different amount of, stress bars if they're feathers, or different abilities, or to, marry or take dye depending on the animal. So I'm not surprised that every now and then there are feathers that don't do well, or individual feathers, I should say, that don't do well. Right. So there we have a married wing, minus the golden pheasant. And we will have the golden pheasant right now. Yeah, part of the challenge of fly tying in general is just getting natural materials to do some unnatural things. Kind of getting it all to look like it goes together can be quite challenging. So there is the fully married wing. So you can see the different layers. Unfortunately, the peacock wing that I have is pretty pale, and so just looking at it, it doesn't quite differentiate itself from the Lady Amherst quite as well as I would like. But again, it's the materials that I have to work with right now. So it's what I have on hand. There's no sense in going out and getting something just for a single fly. So yeah, it is. That is kind of what it is. Yeah, as you can see here on this feather, this is kind of a nice. It's a really nice light honey color in the lighter bars, but it's just not strongly or strong enough of a color to differentiate itself from Lady Amherst when it's in a wing. Because again, when you cut down a feather into the slips that are used in a married wing, you do lose a little bit of that definition with barring. You know, if you have a barred feather, so you know it's always something to consider. If you're going to marry if you're going to do a complex married wing like this, that is something to consider when you're selecting what colors go next to what, or what things you put into the wing, how you put in the wing, how many fibers you put in the wing. So I could probably get away with putting into this particular wing um, single fiber of yellow, because if you look at this wing, if you look at the wing, you can tell that right away, even the blurry viewfinder, the yellow has really strong, but the claret is not. So maybe I could do a single fiber yellow and 3 fibers each of claret, and that would show better. I'm not, because I've already made that wing, but I've already made that wing. I think it looks attractive, and there's a lot of claret in the body, so I'm not too concerned about the claret not reading in the fly in general. Uh, but in terms of the way the wing is constructed, that is something to consider. Okay. Snip out all the slips for the other wing. Okay. All right, so that was a short fiber. So we'll come back to that. To admit, this is some of the more chewed up Lady Amherst pheasant than I've seen in a while. But not complaining. It's nice to have it. I do have a full tail behind me, but if you can believe it, that tail is in worse condition. So yeah, a lot of the feathers in um, this jar right here are actually feathers that I found at like the zoo. So they are, of course, super raggedy and super dirty. Uh, I could probably invest a little bit of time into cleaning them up, and maybe a few of them would be okay for fly tying, but it's probably not worth the effort for to clean up even a handful of them. So I'm not. Let's see. And yeah, zoo feathers can be great, but they are one. You're not guaranteed to get a right and a left. Pairs are really important in fly tying because we do tie things bilaterally. And there's some fly tiers out there who will tie display flies, but they will only put feathers on one side of the fly. The side that's the front of the frame, which that's that's an efficiency for sure. That's one way to be efficient. I disagree with that in principle, But I understand that people want to be efficient with their materials, especially the really rare things. Uh, I personally think because we're imitating or because we're doing replicas and reproductions of things that were used, so tools essentially, um, you should, in principle, be able to take the fly out of the frame and fish it. Not that you would want to, but in principle, you ought to be able to. And if you only tie 50% of a fly, then that's not possible. So, you know, um, so I tie all my flies to be bilateral. Now, I don't claim to tie my flies in a manner that would make them robust or long lasting as a while being fished. But in a pinch, in a jiffy, you could pull one of my flies out of the frame, and it would fish properly. And you have to remember that these are tools. Essentially, these were practical fishing lures used by folks in the 19th and early 20th century. We look at them as like art pieces or uh, kind of what's the word, like material culture, but they are also they're also tools. So I think making them so they aren't functional is not doing them justice, really. All right, so just finishing up the first layer on the other side of the other the far side wing, or mm, yeah. So if you order a frame fly, just be sure you understand that you may or may not be getting a full a full fly. Um, you know, all of my flies will always be tied fully bilaterally. You'll get, even if you won't see the far side of the fly, you will still get a bilateral fly. Um, it says it has a pair of um, Indian crow or cotinga for sides, then it'll have a pair, even if you don't see part of that pair. I will say that I do use mostly substitutes for things like Indian crow and cotinga, which is like a tropical blue iridescent bluebird. I do use substitutes for those because they are both rare, expensive, and I believe endangered. So you won't actually find those on my flies. But in principle, um, you will get it. You would get a pair of feathers if I said there was a pair of feathers in the fly. So those are the wings. Oops, I got one more piece of golden pheasant tail to marry in. Which side? So again, this is a 3/0 hook, so I don't need to use the longest part. So I'm just adding that in. So there we go. That's the far side wing for me, or the side that's closest to the camera. I'm just going to trim up the butts a little bit just to make it a little bit neater. If you haven't been here before, I do that to just make tying in the wing a little bit easier. The butts, if they're too long, they can get in the way. That makes the tying in a little bit more difficult. And I'm going to put the wings back to back. So here, just going to align them, align the tips. And here you can see, you know, as I work on aligning the wings, having the butts short or at least a similar length does make it so they don't catch each other. Then just make sure they're of even curvature. Put them on the fly. See how they sit. I'm going to hold it here, and I'm holding it vertically so that I pinch the entire wing. And as usual, a little bit of saliva just to soften the wing at the tie-in point, particularly the golden pheasant, because golden pheasant can be a little bit resistant to collapsing. So you just want to make sure that that's all nice and as pliant as possible. Pinching at the tie-in point, and then I'm lifting the butts here and lifting the wings slightly, and that just compresses the wing between, like right where my fingers are, right where that thread is tied in. It just compresses it. Here I'm going to make one more wrap, and this is just a soft loop. I'm just letting the weight of the bobbin crush and compress those fibers right there. And then I have a second wrap. I'm going to take my fingers off so you can see just right at that tying point, just the weight of the bobbin. You can see that these butts are going up, and then if I just straighten out the wing a little bit, then that becomes a fully set wing. All right, so again, one soft loop, begin bringing the butts up and compressing the center point here. Another soft loop, again, just letting the weight of the bobbin, and this is still just the weight of the bobbin right here, compressing the fibers. And I'm going to pinch here, and I'm going to start wrapping with solid wraps with real pressure. Okay, just 2 more wraps, and I'm progressing down the hook. So I don't want to compress the wing in this direction because then I would be shortening the wing. But I want to keep compressing it going down the fly this way. I'm going to soften my wax, my ball of wax. I'm going to wax my thread now, start binding down the butt ends of the wing. Okay. and I always go back before I make any more further wraps. I'm going to compress and pinch here, and what that does is it keeps the wings from shifting as I wrap. So even though as I wrap this way, I'm still kind of putting some torque on the wings, I'm not letting the wings move in response to that torque. I'm going to gently trim. Again, I'm just doing this in small sections, a little bit at a time, just so I don't torque on the wing. Okay, and then continuing to pinch the wing, I'm going to just finish tying down the butts. Okay, need a little bit more wax on my thread. I'm going to bind down the butts all the way to the eye. I'm going to do it solidly so that they don't shift when I add more components now on top. That was maybe a little too much pressure there. Now, one of the things here you'll notice, though, is it's not all coming undone because I waxed my thread. This is why you wax your thread. So, yeah, so I am not worried at this moment. Even though I just broke my thread, I'm not worried about my wing coming off because this entire area has been heavily waxed. I'm actually going to keep... I'm going to wax this thread, then I'm going to restart just because I want to be able to bind down this loose end here. Make sure it's not too got any fuzzies. Okay. Now I know this is going to seem like I'm adding a lot of bulk to the head, and I am, but I'm not worried about it because again, this has a dubbed mode. Well, I'm going to dub the head, but it would have a wool head, so you know, it's not so important that I control the bulk. If I was just going to do a lacquer head, I'd probably do a little bit more control of the bulk, but not. All right, so let me clean up some of my feathers that I have scattered around my desk now, and then we'll move on to the sides. And the sides are ibis and teal. So one of the reasons why I didn't put the teal in the underwing is that it already has teal in the sides, and that'll be a far more visible position for it in the wing. So, you know, the teal might get lost if it was part of the underwing in the way I've constructed this fly. Also, it doesn't tie in very well in that position. But the other thing is it has teal in the sides. So you'll see it anyway. And it'll be much more visible there. So it has teal and ibis sides. And it also has mallard roof and blue and yellow macaw horns. The way we're going to do this is we'll do our normal tent style or shell style mallard roof. For the ibis, instead of ibis, I'm actually going to use gray parrot. It says gray parrot, but actually some of the wing or tail coverts I think are pink. So they look like ibis. It's a good substitute. It's more readily available than ibis. And then, yeah, we'll finish off the fly. So, I made the mistake of storing my longer feathers on the floor for today. Oop. Oh, but I try to do a little bit of little bit of prep before the stream, a little bit of mise en place, but I'm not very organized. All right, I don't have a great place to just lay out feathers, so it ends up not being terribly organized. It's just kind of scattered on my desk. So we have some teal. This is actually, it says barred wood deck, but I reuse these bags, so um, I have a little bit of teal here, and we'll do the tie-in one side, uh, reverse the thread, tie in the other. And I don't have a whole lot of gray parrots, so these are in fact not bilateral feathers, and they don't match. But it's the best I got right now. Oh wait, sorry, I do have a pair. Man, that was hard to tell though. um, all right. So, it's actually some decent length there. I've not used this gray parrot in a while. It's not a terribly common. It's not terribly common for salmon flies to ask for large amounts of ibis, or So these feathers have lasted me for a while. And, I would like to get my hands on some real ibis, but I don't know about its like CITES status. I'm sure somebody will tell me, but it, it's more difficult to get your hands on here. So it is easier because you can get gray parrot feathers from your local um, pet shop. Just from the shed. So the parrot and the teal are two very different feathers. They don't really want to marry together, so I'll just kind of. Two turns. Just check to make sure they're flat. I want to trim it. A couple turns up to the eye of the hook. And we'll do the other side. So to reverse my thread, again, I just tucked the thread between the gut of the eye and the blind eye, the nub of the blind eye, and then I just reverse my thread. And again, we reverse I reverse my thread when tying in, duck flank, particularly on the sides, because um, it, duck flank is so soft. If you were to tie, if you think of it as like, what's a good way to describe this? Um, Tying in one side, the thread is going up and over, but when you tie in the other side, the thread is actually going down and over. So by reversing my thread, now the thread is going up and over for both sides. And that just helps the the duck lay flat against. Otherwise, one side has a tendency to roll in the different direction and then it kicks out. By reversing your thread, you just make sure that doesn't happen at all. All right. Two. Down. Reverse my thread again. So now it's going back the normal way. Okay, everything's still in alignment. Just going to preen my wing out a little bit so that it's nice before I start putting stuff on top of it. Some stray hackles here. Some stray fibers from the throat. And all right. Next is the mallard roof. And I always have a particular order I tend to tie things in. I tend to tie the sides in, you know, whether that includes cheeks and, and duck sides. I'll tie the sides in and the cheeks in at the same time. Then I'll do the roof. Then I'll do the topping if there is one. This one does not have this. The Bonne Bouche does not have a topping, but if it did, then that would be after the mallard roof. And then finally would be the horns. For me, the horns always go last. Sometimes I know people will tie them in the order that they're listed in the recipe, and sometimes the horns are listed before the topping. That's fine. I think most of the time the horns that I tie in end up under the topping anyway, just in the process of preening out the wing. But I will always tie the horns in last because if I successfully do it, I do like it when the horns, you know, stick up past the topping. All right, so as always for the roof, we're looking at bronze mallard, but we're always looking for that really kind of soft bronze mallard. It's kind of got bronzy tips, so bronzy tips, but then a lot of this gray here. And that just helps make it easier to tie it in properly. And it's not matching. This is nice, but this is the wrong side. I need lefts and rights. Okay, I think this will do. Okay. Inside. Other side. All right, so I have the two slips. I have a right and a left. I'm just going to put them together, and I'm going to make sure their tips are more or less even. And they're just going to go together like this. And kind of the neat thing about mallard is in that gray region here, it will tend to kind of pseudo marry along the seam, even though they're from opposite sides, opposite sides of the bird. They will kind of sort of marry. It's not quite the same, and it's not quite as good as like true married fire feathers, but then you just kind of fold them in half. You kind of get this tent effect. And then you want to preen them so they curve. Just keep preening them until they curve enough to go around the wing. So this is the exact same kind of steps you would take to make like a carapace style of spay wing, except then you just continue to preen it so that it will follow the curvature of the wing you're putting it on. Just keep printing it. Yeah, and like I mentioned before, this is a technique that I actually learned out of a 1997 fly tire magazine. This one is just a little bit too much. Shorten that one a little bit. Tie it in. Again, I just kind of soft looped it in. And then kind of use my fingers, wiggle a little bit just to make sure it's centered. A couple of turns. Make sure that it is right on top of the wing, because that's really important. And that looks pretty good. All right, so I'm actually going to undo 1, 2 of those wraps, wax my thread. Waxing your thread not only helps stick things down, but it also helps control all the fuzzies. So if you have extra fur or bits of feather just kind of accumulating around your tie-in point, waxing your thread will help just kind of mat those down or stick them down to fly. All right. Now we just have to add the macaw horns and the head, and we'll be all set. Now, let me just again clean up some feathers so I don't have too many feathers floating around. Grab macaw. Go macaw. One of the tricks I use is I always tie in the far side horn first. And the reason for that is that I can better judge the angle and length. I can better control the angle and length of the near side horn. So if I tie in the far side one first, I can more easily match it when I tie in the near side horn. There's one horn. There's another horn. And I'm going to wax my thread one last time so that I can tie in or dub the head. And then we'll call it a day. So I'm going to use this wax thread to just bind down the horns a little bit. Just do a quick trim. Okay. A little bit more wax for the red mohair. Scarlet, dyed by Bill Bailey. You can get it from feathersmc.com. My usual purveyor of materials. Okay, just quick dubbed head. Quite happy. I think I need a little bit more dubbing. Now, if you're having trouble it's a fairly sizable head. It's actually a little bit bigger than I would like it. I think I know it's a problem. So, yeah, not my first choice, but I'm going to try and pull down. Heavily wax this thread. So I'm having a little bit of trouble with my thread with the dubbing on it slipping down the face of the front face of the head here. So I'm actually going to just add a little extra wax to the head. And what that'll do is it'll help stick the dub. Yeah, that's a trick that works for both hurl and dubbing. If you've ever seen me dub the body of a fly before, what I do is I will lay down a layer of wax thread under the dubbing, on top of the underbody, under the dubbing. What that does is it provides a tacky surface for the dubbing to adhere to. So that's a little bit of a neater. So what I'll do is I will unwrap a little bit because again, wax thread. Again, I'm just using the wax thread to kind of stick down the extra fuzzies. Then I will whip finish. Kelson's head cement. Okay. There we go. So we have here le Bonne Bouche, which is properly an Irish salmon fly. But as I mentioned last week, Bonne Bouche means tasty morsel in French. Of course, you want this to be a tasty morsel for some salmon. So finished Bonne Bouche. Um, yeah. If you want to see more of my work, check out my Instagram. It's at justwondering.brad. If you want to support the channel or purchase any of the flies that you've seen me tie here, you can check out my Etsy shop. It's Studio1213. Thanks for hanging out with me. There will be a couple of Saturdays coming up where I won't be able to stream in August, just because of the what's going on with the pandemic and the fact that I work in public health. Some of you know that I'm a microbiologist. By my day job is as a microbiologist, and I'm back in school for my master's of public health and epidemiology. So I've been working with my local health department, and then I will be starting a new job shortly, working with a different county. So things are going to get a little bit busy, or they've already been pretty busy, but they're going to get a little bit busier for me. So there'll be some Saturdays where I won't be able to stream, but I'm going to try and stream as many Saturdays as I can. It might have to be Sunday, just depending on the week. But yeah, thanks for hanging out, and I will catch you next time.